Okay, so let's go ahead and finish up the back of the review. So remember that when we deal with complex numbers, we are just treating them like variables, so I combine like terms. When I have a subtraction, do not forget that you have to distribute that -1 through. So I have a -1 times a -4, which is actually going to give me a positive, and I have a -1 times a positive 7i. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute that through. Now I will combine my like terms. So 2 plus 4 gives me 6, and -3i and -7i is going to give me a -10i. Okay. Multiplication, we are going to FOIL. So 9 times 6 gives me 54. 9 times a positive 2i is going to give me 18i. -7 times 6 is going to give me a -42i. And then I have a -7i times a positive 2i, so 14i squared. I can combine my like terms, so I have 54, I have 18 minus 42, and then I'm going to need to apply that I squared, which I know is actually a -1. So I'm going to end up with 54 minus 24i plus 14. So the last thing I can do is combine the 54 and the 14. So I'm kind of running out of room, so I'm just going to put it up here. So I have 68 minus 24i. Okay. Alright, so we are omitting 11 and 17. Although if we were going to do that, we would do 3571 divided by 4, and we are going to get 892.75. so this is 3/4, so we're actually left with I cubed, which is a -I. Okay, over here, so since I am adding, I don't really need my parentheses because I don't have a negative sign that I need to distribute through. So combine our like terms. So I have 5 plus a -4, which will give me 1, and I have 6i minus 8i, which is going to give me a -2i. Again, I'm multiplying, so I need to FOIL. So 3 times -1 is going to give me a -3. 3 times a -6 is going to give me a -18i. -8i times -1 is going to give me a positive 8i. And then -8i times a -6i is going to give me a positive 48i squared. So let's combine our like terms. I have a -18, and then I'm going to go ahead and add 8i, so I have a -10i. And then I need to replace this I squared with a -1. So -3 minus 10i minus 48. So the last thing I'm going to combine my constants. So I have -51 minus 10i. Right here, I'm just multiplying single terms. I'm not multiplying algebraic expressions. So I can just multiply. So 10 times -4i gives me a -40i. And then I'm going to multiply that by a -8i. So I'm going to end up with positive 320i squared, but we know that I squared is really -1, so I'm going to end up with a -320. Okay. So adding again, so I can get rid of those parentheses, and then combine my like terms. So 6 minus 4 is going to give me 2, and then I have 2i plus 8i, so 10i. Now since I'm subtracting, remember I have that -1 that I do need to go ahead and distribute through. So -1 times a -4 is going to end up giving me a positive, and a -1 times a positive 8i is going to give me a -8i. So 6 plus 4 is going to give me 10. 2i minus 8i is going to give me a -6i. So even though it says omit, we'll go ahead and do 86 divided by 4. Gives me 21.5. That's 2/4. So I'm going to end up with I squared, which is really negative 1. Alright, to solve using the quadratic formula, the first thing I need to do is make sure that my equations are in standard form. So ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Right here, I'm going to need to move this 15x to the other side. And right here, I need to move this 3. Okay, so here is my quadratic formula. So if I plug this in, I have negative b, but b is already negative, so I'm going to go ahead and make that positive. And I have b squared minus 4ac, and all of that is divided by 2a. So let's go ahead and figure out what I get underneath my radical. So 28 squared is 784. And I have 4 times 4 times 49 over 8. Well, if I look right here, my whole radical is going to go away. So I'm going to end up with 28 over 8, which is divisible by 2. So actually it's divisible by 4, so I'm going to get 7 over 2. So that is my solution. Okay. Right here, so if I do negative b, so negative 8 plus or minus the square root, and then I have 8 squared minus 4ac, all of that divided by 2 times a. So I get 64 minus 4 times 3 times 30, which gives me 360 over 6. So 64 minus 360 is going to leave me with a negative 296, and all of that is still over 6. So since I have a negative, I know I'm going to have an imaginary number, but I can still break down my 296 into its prime factorization. So if I come over here and do 296 and then divide by 2, 148, and then divide by 2 again, divide by 2 again, and 37 is a prime number. So I have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 37. So I'm going to bring out a 2. But don't forget to bring out that I with it. And then I'm still left with a 74 underneath and a 6.